Lindsay Moore, a health coach living on Lake Bowen in Spartanburg, South Carolina. My blog, Just a Little Organic, JALO for short, is where I chronicle my life and share my passion for food, healthy living, and nature with friends and family. Now, thanks to Ingles, I'm gonna cook with you. I'm gonna take you step by step and show you how to bring some of my favorites to your kitchen table. Today we're starting out at Ingles, getting the ingredients to make my homemade apple cinnamon granola. For a full list of all the ingredients, check out the shopping list underneath the video player. You can print a list and take it with you or pull it up on your phone when you're at the store. Now let's get cooking. All right guys, we're back from Ingles and we're about to make my homemade apple cinnamon granola. So the one thing I really like about granola is that you can make it at home and you know exactly what's going into it. So instead of buying it at the store, you can come home, you can make it, you know how much fat, you know how much sugar, you know how much stuff you're putting in, and you know they're not any preservatives, and it's tasty. And I really like to make it to give for gifts at during the fall, or if somebody has us over for dinner or something, I'll just package it up in a nice little mason jar and take it over, and people love it. So you can eat it by itself, on top of milk, on top of granola, on top of a smoothie bowl, whatever you want. So the first thing we're gonna do is get 3½ cups of rolled oats, and we're gonna mix our dry ingredients first. So again, we'll start with 3½ cups of rolled oats, and you wanna get rolled, not quick cooking. Quick cooking will kind of disintegrate. And then if you're gonna use nuts and seeds, this is totally optional. You wanna get raw pumpkin seeds and raw pecans. And if you have them already toasted, you can just add them on at the end, but we're using raw today, so we'll go ahead and dump ½ cup of pumpkin seeds, ½ cup of pecans, and then we'll start with 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, a teaspoon of kosher salt, ½ teaspoon of allspice, and that's it for the dry ingredients. So we'll just give them a stir, quick stir, just to make sure everything's incorporated. And then we'll set this aside and get started on our wet ingredients. All right, the reason that we're gonna put these wet ingredients on the stove is because I'm using coconut oil today and I wanna heat it up so it gets nice and liquidy. And we're gonna use maple syrup as our sweetener. And we have ½ cup of maple syrup, 1/4 cup of unsweetened applesauce. And the good thing about the unsweetened applesauce is that you get to use less oil if you use this applesauce. So it's a little bit less fat. Not that fat's bad, but it is a little bit less fat. And then we have 1/4 cup of coconut oil. So some people might think that coconut oil is gonna give it a super coconutty flavor, but it really doesn't. All of the other flavors will take over that coconut oil, and it's just a really good way to make it crunchy, add some healthy fat, and get the kind of granola you want. So we're gonna go ahead and take our wet ingredients and put them on the stove over medium-high heat for about 2 minutes. You don't want it to boil, you just want the coconut oil to melt and everything to mix together. All right, our coconut oil is melted. We've taken everything off the heat, and we're gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And we wanna add this off the heat so it doesn't burn and it keeps that flavor. So we'll just give it a quick stir. And then we'll add our wet ingredients to our dry ingredients and incorporate them well. You just want to make sure that all of the grains are coated in the liquid. And it might seem like not a lot of liquid, but it does end up coating everything once you give it a good stir. And you may have noticed that we have some dry apples here. And they're great to add in afterward, but we don't want to add them in right now because if we did, they would get this like awkward, crunchy, chewy, not pleasant texture. So we're not going to add them in yet. And we'll make sure this is all mixed together. And we're going to add it to a baking pan that's just covered in a parchment paper. You don't have to use parchment paper, but I like to because you can pick it up and dump it into whatever your container is. In our case, it's gonna be a mason jar, but it could be a bunch of little mason jars, and it's really nice to have something to kind of funnel that in. So now we're gonna dump the whole mixture onto the pan, and we're gonna spread it out nice and evenly. You can use your fingertips, you can use a spatula, whatever you want. Just make sure that it's kind of all evenly out here. All right, and I have my oven preheated to 300 degrees, and we're just gonna pop this in. We're gonna let it cook for about 20 minutes, and then we're gonna give it a quick stir and pop it back in for another 10 to 15. You want it to cook for about 35 to 45 minutes. You just gotta keep your eye on it. And notice when the kitchen starts smelling really good, that's when you know that it's time to take it out. So we'll go ahead and put it in the oven. All right, so we've just pulled our granola out of the oven and we've let it sit for 10 minutes. When you pull it out of the oven, it's gonna seem like it's chewy, but I promise if you let it sit for 10 minutes, it'll get to that really good crunch that you want. So that's what we've done. We've let it sit for 10 minutes, and now it's time to add in the rest of our ingredients. And I've chosen dried apples, but you can really put anything you want in here. I just thought that apples are fall and they go well with cinnamon, but it's really up to you. So we'll add our dried apples. And I cut these dried apples. I kind of chopped them up a little bit. You can leave them whole if you want. And then I'm just going to mix them with my hands. It smells delicious, like fall spice in here. So like I said before, I think we're gonna use a mason jar to put our granola in. If you do this, it's just a really nice airtight container, and it'll stay good for about a week in here. And it makes for great hostess gifts. So you can put this in the mason jar, maybe tie a little ribbon on it and take it to your friend who has you over for dinner. So I'm just gonna spoon some handfuls in here. Nothing neat and tidy. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Well, we're all out of time for today, but I want to thank you for joining us here at the Ingles table. Remember, you can find this recipe, videos, photos, and more on the website at inglestable.com. Until next time, I'll see you online.